Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the second time today, given that we had our other talk this morning. I am one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I am the first of the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Yeah, and we want to thank you for joining us for another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. Uh, Quick spiel, I guess, since we did this earlier as well, but not all of you may have seen that. Welcome, whether you're here live, we have a couple friends of ours here, and maybe more will be popping in shortly. And we have all of you friends who are watching on YouTube. Thanks for being here. And we are so happy to have you. And if you're here twice in one day, checking in with us, that's pretty exciting. We appreciate it. But if you're on YouTube, help us out if you like, which we would love. If you do the whole like, comment, subscribe thing, we would love to get a few more comments lately. And
Yeah, if you think we're being boring and you have nothing to say, tell us about it in the comments. Lighten up.
exactly, we would welcome that too. That's fine. Um, Other than that, yeah, we still would love to have people sign up for our mailing list below, or if you'd rather join our Facebook group, or
Or do
both.
both.
The links for those are below. We have been slacking on mentioning those, so I just wanted to pull those in. They're in the description. Check them out. And those are the ways in which you can reach out to us to do one-on-ones as well. And we've received some great feedback on those lately, which we appreciate and we
We didn't
welcome
have to
you.
even pay anybody to say anything.
Yeah, testimonials unbidden. How nice is that? um, Anything else you'd add, Mushtaq?
Um, no, that's about it.
Yeah, I guess as I mentioned this morning, the virtual retreat that we do annually is going to be coming up towards the end of August, beginning of September. I need to get the ball rolling on that, obviously, so those of you who might be interested can sign up for that. And that is for anyone and everyone who's interested. We have a really great time together doing our uh,
Our practices.
practices,
Yes.
point blank. We'll have more to share with you about that. We'll have the launch page out soon.
Yeah, the practices that we do are a secret known only to participants. They're very powerful. They're even magical, some of them. They're life
Oh,
transforming. But we're not
well,
going to tell you what they are. You have to join the retreat to find out.
how relevant to our talk tonight, because we're going
Yes.
to be talking about other super secret magical things in a pretty literal sense this evening, aren't we?
Yes. We have to be careful because we're going to be breaking a few rules, and some of the old stodgy individuals in the ancient Sufi community are probably going to try and turn us into newts for what we're going to tell you tonight. But we're going to tell you anyway. We're going to
So,
risk it for you.
I am prepared for newtdom.
Yeah.
So,
Find a nice rock, crawl under it, relax, wait for the spell to wear off,
yeah.
gobble up the occasional bug. It would be a nice vacation.
Yep, and you could use one of those
I
more
could
than
use
most
one.
of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But
we
then we turn them into newts back. Bitter newts.
revenge.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Newts everywhere.
The Newt Collective. That will be us.
So
So, in
magic.
seriousness, yes, back to the topic at hand. Magic, right?
Yeah. This is Sufi magic. This is not just any magic. This is not old Uncle Alistair's magic, right? That's boring magic. You gotta have too many costumes and wave too much stuff around and do all the talk funny. You gotta talk funny for that.
hmm
This is not that. This
We
is
like to keep it simpler, don't we?
yes, Sufi magic. So a wise dervish once said, magic is pretty much just paying attention. Very wise old dervish.
Quoted anonymously.
Quoted anonymously, yes. And there is so much truth to this, because if you are not paying attention, literally paying for your existence with your attention, then your attention is fixated on the machine, on your mechanical nature, on the stuff. Your attention is fixated on whatever the stuff is for you. And we talked about some stuff this morning that relates to that, with the primordial meta emotions, each of which can become stuff, except for 0.9 will not. Well, 0.9 could even become stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that could be overdone for
Yeah.
sure.
And you can get stuck at any one of those rather than doing what you're supposed to do, which is to flow through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit of, well, a lot of what magic is about, is flow.
Yes. So if you, now the word in Arabic that we use to describe magic is karamat, and that doesn't mean magic. It literally should be translated more to charismatic abilities. So think about that. It's not, I have the power to get a jinn to do something for me. It is my charisma creates a way for things to happen that I want to happen.
And we've discussed what jinn are previously, which
Yeah, don't worry about the
yeah,
jinn. But let
yeah.
me give you an example of that. In San Francisco, in the late in the 19th century, there was a fellow whose name was Norton the First. And he was an interesting character because he named himself Emperor of America and Protector of Mexico. He printed his own money. He stayed at the finest hotels, even though he was a homeless person. Everybody loved him. Here's an example of real magic. Bunch of the boys got all riled up about them Chinese people being in San Francisco. And they were going to go and burn them out. They were going to burn down Chinatown and chase all them yeller people out. This riot was stopped in its track by Emperor Norton standing in the middle of Market Street as the crowd was coming towards him and praying. And nobody would pass him. They all just turned around and went home.
Hmm.
Be like Emperor Norton.
Yeah, this is in our previous talk about magic. I would love to tie into that. We
Yes.
talked about storytelling
Yeah.
and leaning into embodying story. And that was essentially what he was doing.
Yeah. He was embodying the story that he is Emperor of the United States and everybody must obey him. And it should be noted that he was, as far as anybody can tell, he was an entirely benign human, full of kindness and grace, and, nuttier than a fruitcake, but it was a good fruitcake.
An
Now
enjoyable fruitcake.
that's one example of this. Sufi magic is not supernatural. It is not designed to violate the laws of the universe. That's not our job. Our job is to work within the laws of the universe and to understand those laws better than the people around us. Think about that. If you understand the laws of the universe better than everybody else around you, could you not utilize those laws better than the people around you to create events that you would like to have happen in alignment with those laws, rather than being opposed to them? That's more like Sufi magic. Sufi magic also has a very high ethical level, because you don't get to have the charismatic powers and abilities without first developing conscience. That seems to be one of the rules.
Well,
So,
that's one of the bounds, right?
yeah. Yeah, in our last talk on magic, which was what, over a year ago, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. We talked about the philosophy. Tonight, for those of you who are actually here and those of you who tune in, we're going to talk about how to do it. What are the practices? How do you develop the attributes necessary? So we mentioned the first attribute, which is attention. To do magic, your attention has got to be like tempered steel. It has to be sharp. It has to be flexible. It has to be tough. And it has to be there. So you have to train your attention. And you have to be able to hold your attention for more than the usual 3/5 of a second. Most people have no attention. I'm not talking about any of you guys who are listening to us. You all are fine. It's the other guy out there who has no attention. But you can develop attention. The easiest way to develop attention is through breath practice. This is why the masters of our path have said our practice is founded in breath, because attention is the first thing you need to do. And it's really simple. Simplest thing in the world. You don't even have to do any special breathing. You just relax, breathe naturally, and put your attention on your breath. And see how long you can hold it there before you get distracted. Feel free to notice when you get distracted. And then bring your attention back to your breath. This is not very exciting. It's not entertaining. You can't do it effectively if you're watching TV or listening to a book or have music in the background or any of that stuff. What you want is to just be present with your breath and focus your attention on your breath until such time as you can hold your attention unbroken on your breath for an extended period of time. Now, when I say unbroken, it's never really unbroken. You will always have little distractions. It's the nature of the thing, because your body will not allow you to ignore anything that is potentially dangerous if you are healthy. So I'll be
So it's
sitting
about,
here.
yeah, returning
Yeah, I'll be
to
sitting
the
here and I'll be
focus.
breathing, and I'll hear a dog go, bark, bark. And that will take my attention for a second, and I'll go, no problem. And then I'm back to my breathing. And that will happen over and over again. And the trick is, how fast can you come back? So it's just a second to check to make sure everything's safe, and then you're back. Or do you start thinking about the dog? Is that my dog? No, I don't have a dog. How could that be my dog? What is that dog doing in my yard? Get off my lawn. You know, all of that kind of stuff. You can get lost in that. And then you've lost your attention. Now, this is like going to the gym. Not very exciting, but you are building your attentional musculature. So you focus on your attention, and you do that until you can hold your attention for a little while. This is the first step to any magic, paying attention. Now, I think I told the story in the last one about a little game I used to do with my students back in the day, which is I would tell them that I was going to do this magic thing, and all week they would find money. So I would, I'd tell them a little story, put them in a light trance basically, and then give them a few suggestions, which are just your attention is going to be focused on the color of money. And there's two colors that you can focus on, maybe three. If you really want to get detailed, you can focus on the green, because we're America and we have really boring money. So green. You can focus on the silver, and you can focus on. And if you focus on the gold as well, who knows what happens? You might end up with a doubloon, which would be fun. Stranger things happen, but you will at least do the main two, which is green and silver. Then I would let them go, and they would come back after we can go, wow, how did you do that? I found so much money. And there's no trick to it at all, because the money was always there. People walk by money all the time. I've actually tested this by putting a $5 bill in the gutter and just standing and watching. And, 50, 60 people would walk by before somebody saw it. That's how inattentive we are. So we build our attention muscles. What's the second step, Noor?
One moment.
Yeah.
I don't know, you can't see, right?
Hello.
I just muted him.
Good. Yeah, sorry about that. We are in the middle of the lesson, so we are rolling, and we will touch base with you along the way, Isa. Thanks for being here. So, after we've started sharpening our attention, right, we're going to be leaning even more so into the will. And we've talked quite a bit about the will. Have we done any talks on that as of late?
Not lately.
Yeah.
But we've talked about will, and I will find one and put it at the end of this so that if people are interested and they can stay till the end, or it's okay to fast forward to the end too if you're bored saying, but there'll be something there.
Yeah, so will is like the power to do. And again, that is another thing that we have to hone, because it is one of, as we describe it, the weakest faculties in the average human being. Because our attention, intention, and presence tend to be pretty puny, our will as well is puny, which means it is very hard for us to be self-motivated to do things, and we end up being driven primarily by our mechanical behaviors, our habits, the things we just do without really thinking twice about it, because that's how we've always done them. And in order to do magic, we have to make sure that we develop a strong sense of will.
Yeah. You can use the metaphor of the laser beam. Attention is light. We are casting a beam of light on something. Will is the polarizing lens that takes the light and puts it all in a coherent waveform. All the light is going up and down, none of it's going sideways. This is a really sloppy way of describing it. Put up with me. So, will says, I am going to keep my attention on this one thing. There are many ways to do that. I mean, there's the candle gazing meditation, where you use your will, you will yourself to focus your attention on the candle. You can use Tonka paintings, or you can do things like fast. Fasting is a wonderful way to develop will, because you will have to battle your urges. And not just fasting from food or water, fast from anything that you are drawn to unconsciously, and you will gain benefit. Fast from talking. That's
Yeah,
a
so
hard one. Yeah.
that is a hard one. So obviously there is this factor of intentional discipline. You are choosing to do a practice, you're not just falling into it, and you are making a commitment to do that thing, and you are essentially, without causing harm to yourself, if you know, ideally, you are testing yourself to see how strong your will is and gradually build on that over time. So as Mushtaq's saying, you can use the candle practice, you can use
But not G. Gordon
fasting.
Liddy's candle practice.
What's that?
I said not G. Gordon Liddy's candle practice.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, G. Gordon Liddy, who was one of the White House plumbers under Nixon and a very weird fellow, once demonstrated that he had will by holding his hand over a candle flame until his flesh started burning.
Oh God.
Yeah.
No need for
This
that.
is not will. It's something else.
Something weird.
Something weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
will allows you to take control of your desires, of your
Right.
impulses, even more
Impulses.
than impulses
Yeah.
is the word we're looking for there.
Yes, agreed. Yep.
And there are a few ways to do that. Like I said, fasting is a brilliant way to do it. And fast from anything that you are driven to do.
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily about the thing you are driven, quote unquote, driven to do, pursue, whatever, being bad per se. It's about managing that impulse
Yeah.
so that you're not a servant to the impulse.
Yeah, there's nothing bad about eating. Eating is good. Eating is necessary. And when you fast, you are using that the bodily impulse to eat and taking control of it and harnessing it.
As a reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you are using your attention practice while you are fasting and using your will, it becomes stronger because they're meant to go together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So any questions so far? We've gone over 2 steps. We've talked about developing attention, and we've talked about, from there, developing will. Did you have a thought, James? Or otherwise we can move on.
Oh, I had thoughts, but it's more like talked about initially with like developing a muscle. I wish I could remember what it was, but there's a documentary a while back about a young lady subject to various self-mutilating OCDs, and she was taught Vipassana to get away from it, to take control. They did scans of her MRIs before and after, and new neural circuits could actually be detected developing, I think, in the front left cortex.
Oh, yeah.
It was quite literally developing a mental muscle, like much the same way your muscle cells, was it not hyperplasia or whatever, but
Hypertrophy.
when they grow.
Word you're looking for.
What was the word?
Hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy. Okay. Same thing with the brain. Literally, a new
Yeah.
circuit started to grow.
Yeah, there's a rule that says use it or lose it.
Yes.
And what
Ancient
you use
mystical.
gets stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for your brain as well as everything else.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wear grooves when you do the same behavior over and over again. Both, I mean, this is a metaphor, of course, but those neural circuits become more strongly imprinted the more that we do certain things. And we have, thanks to neuroplasticity, which means, you know, we can make steps to change our neurology, we can pivot to increasing the strength of other neural circuits.
Yeah.
Thus, the necessity of the work if you want to move from states to stations.
Yes. Thank you for making that connection. So true. Yes. Yep.
Now, if you have practiced this for a while, you have developed presence. When you begin to focus your attention and get control of your will, presence tends to follow. And that is one of the key components of your charisma. And I'm not sure how to even describe it. Charisma is the ability to bring people into connection with you and for you to connect with other people. The technical term is rapport. Charisma is what you use to create rapport with people, dogs, cats, trees, anything around you. The more of it you have, the deeper connection you have. And this will become important in just a little bit. But you are now starting to get some of that charisma developed. Think about, so there's a guy you're talking to, looks much like me, and he's going,
Spacing out, looking all over,
yeah,
checking the watch.
yep. As opposed to the guy who's talking to you and he's sitting here and he's looking right at you and he's paying attention to you. He has that attention that he has honed with his practice and he's putting it on you.
That might be a little intense for many people. They're not used to
but
that.
you also have to learn to tone it down sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Use just enough attention to develop that rapport. Once you have the rapport, you can use deeper and deeper attention because it's like with anything else. Think about you meet somebody at the coffee shop and you haven't seen them for a while and you're a little standoffish at first, but as you talk and as you connect, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and you forget about the coffee and your coffee is cold and there are flies on your crumpets and everything and you don't care because you are so locked into the other person and they're so locked into you and you have created a deep rapport with them and you remember the conversation 3 weeks later as if it was yesterday because you've built the neural pathways to do that.
Yep.
And this is the next step towards magic, is to begin to use your attention and your will in everyday life. So your attention says, I need to do a task. Your will says, all right, let me roll up my sleeves. We're going to do the task. And all of you parts of this guy who want to make excuses, shut up. That's what your will does. And so you become more effective in the world just from that. And then, you want to tell us the next step, Noor?
I would love to. So from here, here's where it goes from all the, discipline and serious, toughing it out, so to speak, not really,
Yeah,
to, what's that?
I said, yeah, really.
Yeah, but we've
Get to the
also
point.
talked
This is why
about
most
like
people can't do magic.
not white knuckling it. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You have to go at a pace that actually gets you successes towards attention and will. That's what I mean. But here is again where it gets fun, where we talk about formulation, like the actual doing of the magic and how that takes place with the support of attention and will. And yeah, so Mushtaq, you described it as how to create fertile ground for that which you want / need to happen.
Yes.
And that's the goal of magic, right? To create some kind of transformation, to create change, make something happen.
Yeah. Uncle Al said that magic is creating change in alignment with will.
Mm-hmm.
That's magic. He didn't even say you gotta like do supernatural stuff. It's just change according to will. So in that case, he was right. And then he had to go have to wear those silly robes.
And then it built from there, right? Yeah. And that was his thing. That was his magic, which is something we need to keep in mind, actually.
Yeah.
So in our previous talk about magic, we talked about storytelling.
Yes.
And
talk about that again.
Yeah, I mean, we have to, because that is such a critical component to this. No matter how you go about, quote unquote, doing magic, it does involve some degree of storytelling, or as we say, it's like myth making in a sense. I think the word myth has a lot of connotations around, falsehoods and made up shit. We are talking about myth from the point of view of building up a landscape, a context, a milieu, a sense of living, breathing, feeling a story. Being able to smell the story, taste the story. That's what I mean by myth making.
Yeah, myth is not a great word because it's been horribly abused.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
But it's what we got. So, if you know anything about Sufis, you know that they love stories. In our video series, there have been a number of times where we have just stopped everything and spent that evening telling you a Sufi story. And there'll be a couple of those at the end of this video too, just for fun. Each of those stories is designed to effect change through will. The storyteller's intention is to change you through the medium of the story. Maybe not in a big way, maybe only in a little way, but that's there. That's Sufi magic, is the ability to tell a story in such a way that it alters the listeners, it alters the audience towards a positive goal. Is this making sense so far?
Yeah, any questions so far? Ismail is sending me questions in the chat. I would love to invite him to ask in the video, and unfortunately he did come a little late, so we may have to do a little bit of catch up, but unfortunately I cannot keep up with questions in the chat.
He must be sending them directly to you because I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, you can send the questions to everyone, like the group chat, Isma. So here's a question that is relevant to the topic at hand. Do you have to identify with the story?
No. Better if you don't.
In a sense, it may seem that way because it's like you're putting on the trappings of the story, but you're not getting so wrapped up in them that you are so subsumed into it that you can't get out. This is my sense of it anyway. Mushtaq may feel a little bit differently
Yeah,
about
I
that.
think you're right. You know, if I tell a Nasruddin story, I don't end up thinking that I'm Nasruddin. I can embody his qualities as I tell the story, but I don't lose myself and I don't
Yeah,
lose my intention.
right.
Could you make sense of his question? Because it,
I am struggling with the question about subconscious. We are talking about a pretty conscious thing
yeah,
that may have some subconscious results, let's say, but it is totally taking place within the conscious mind.
here's the thing. I don't believe in the subconscious. I think the subconscious was a stupid thing that Freud came up with.
Mm.
There is the conscious mind, and there is the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is everything that you are not conscious of right now, but it's not below anything, which is what the subconscious implies. There is no lower mind that's sitting underneath you who's bobbing on the surface.
I would agree with that, yeah. It's kind of like the spotlight's on it or it's not, right? Yeah. And the intent of the storyteller in magic is pretty pivotal. Because this is how we are driving the story in the first place, is through that will, through that intent. What is the purpose of this? You know, it isn't just happening for no reason, just to shoot the shit. Magic is done for a specific purpose. That is part of its power. It has a driving intent.
So think again of Emperor Norton. He did magic to stop the murder of hundreds of people and the destruction of massive amounts of property. And it had nothing to do with him, interestingly enough. It would not have hurt him directly for those things to happen. And yet he used his power and authority to change that. Yes, James.
Okay, so in terms of the stories being told, what you just said made think back to Viktor Frankl and his idea of having meaningful activity, something going beyond the conventional self, the usual drives. Now, what was it? Creativity, extending knowledge, loving another. That it has an expansive quality. And most magicians and sorcerers I've met, it's how to get more money, how to get laid, how to get revenge. Da 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 da.
Yeah,
There's
if you
nothing
look
totally.
at a lot of the old grimoires, that's what you find.
Yeah. And a lot of the people
Yeah.
I've bumped into the scene, totally dominated by.
Yeah, it kind of boggles the mind because here you have an elaborate ceremony that will take weeks and weeks to do and probably cost you hundreds of dollars in material to win the favors of a woman. Nobody ever
try
said,
go out
"Hey,
meeting a woman.
just go ask her out, man. Take her to dinner. Tell her a joke. You know, let her see how witty you are. The only reason you need magic to try and get a woman is if you are some sort of incel.
It's
The incel community is going to be coming for me with the pitchforks and the torches.
We love that.
Yeah.
Let them come.
they've got to get out of the basement first. That is the impression I get, that a crucial part is the story has to have some expansive quality beyond the usual grubby self-preoccupations.
Well, I would say Sufi magic does. I
Yeah,
mean,
that. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, I would say other people use it for all kinds of purposes that I or Mushtaq or someone else may find like, why not just go do that, Or, you know, ethics get involved, right?
Ethics
There,
and also, sorry, I'm barging right on top of it. My apologies, but
You
it's depends.
bastard.
Are you keeping yourself small by these obsessions?
Yeah. And
yes.
Yeah.
people who do that do not understand magic. So you need
Mm,
money. You conjure up a demon over and over again with the idea that he will lead you to hidden treasure and you will get rich. Now, if it's me, instead of conjuring up a demon, I create the path to the future through my story, through my narrative that um, allows me to move to the place where I am naturally earning money. I don't have, look, if you conjure up a demon and first of all, he's not going to take you to any decent treasure because if he knew where decent treasure was, he wouldn't be on the conjuring circuit. And then you're stuck with him. You got to feed him. You got to change his litter box. You got to do all of this stuff. And it's not worth it. Better to craft a path through space-time to doing the things that will bring you the prosperity that you need. And that's like the last part of the whole magic thing here is when you are doing Sufi magic, when you're affecting change in the world that way, you are looking along the continuum of time and figuring out through your story, or your story figures out how to get from where you are to where you aim to be. It's not even where you want to be, it's where you aim to be.
That's a much better word. That is very much in line with how we framed
Yeah.
thinking about
Yeah.
directionality of the will.
Yeah, I'm going to stop here and say that some of these understandings both of us got from a friend of ours whose name is Arden Leigh, who she teaches this stuff and she's brilliant at it. And we'll put a link to her YouTube channel down in our chat or something. We will mention her.
Yes.
Yeah, because she is brilliant. She understands this stuff like nobody's business, and she's not culty. Most of the people who do this stuff tend to be a little bit culty, and she's not culty. So for deep study, she's a good play. Look at her material.
Yeah, so here's a relevant question that many people sitting here may be asking. And we will revisit what you were just saying about.
I just want to put in a plug for Arden because she was instrumental in us formulating some of these ideas.
Yes,
that we
a
did.
stronger sense of how we want to communicate about this, which is ongoing in its development, of course. So Isa asks, how can intent and will affect something outside of us? There's probably more to it than what I know.
Ishmael, can you get up and walk over and turn on or off the light switch in your room? Yes or no?
Yes.
If you do that, have you not just affected something outside of yourself with your will?
I mean, essentially the answer is yes.
Yeah. I mean, that is the answer. You do it by doing it.
He says it was myself doing it, physical.
Yes. So what moved your body? Did your body just move without any prompting?
Self.
Yeah. So there you go. Like I said, Sufi magic is not supernatural. There is nothing supernatural that a good dervish will do. It's not our job to do the supernatural shit. That's left for God and the angels and all of that stuff. Yeah, supernatural is above our pay grade. All we do is work with nature, but we want to develop the deepest understanding of nature that we can.
Well, that's the key, right? Because
Yes.
as you said in the beginning, this is about learning how to work within the laws of nature on a level that is not typical.
Yes.
And so we're
Yes,
not
Ishmael,
breaking
you're exactly right
rules.
with what you just said.
He says, the storyteller affecting the listener. The listener is outside.
Yep,
Well, the listener may be inside as
as
well.
well. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
tell
because
yourself
this
a good,
is,
the best stories are the ones that you tell yourself consciously.
yes, yes, yeah. So this is not just something that works on other people. In fact, I think uh, we will find that if we're solo practitioners, that it's magic we're doing on ourselves, stories we're telling ourselves, narratives and worlds we're building out for ourselves to create transformation, knowing that we are not to get lost in that, but that we are able to use it as a vehicle for entering into a, how do I want to phrase this? It allows us to get beyond current perceived constraints.
Yeah,
That's one way I would put it.
I like
And
that.
yeah, and it may be that up until a certain point, you've been telling yourself a story about how you were a fragile wallflower. You've been living that story, but unconsciously rather than consciously. At which point, when you realize that's happening, you're like, what would it be like if I lived into a different story on purpose? So you could become some variation on being a quiet wallflower that actually appeals to you and feels like the way of moving through the world that is satisfying to you, or you could try on something different and see what that's like. This is an opportunity to do that. In the level of ornateness it takes for that story to feel relevant and relatable to you is going to vary from person to person.
Yep.
And that's where creativity can come into play. James.
Could you elaborate on that last point a bit more?
Yes, I had a feeling that there would be a need for some elaboration in
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, I've done some study in this domain of my own, and as we talked about in our previous talk about magic, as we see it, this is not the kind of magic that is dependent on, excuse me, ritual objects like rattles and altars and, you know, things of that nature, statues to build out.
Swords, cups.
Yeah, all of that. Robes. But there may be a part of you that finds that really fun and feels like that would be a way to taste, see, smell a different reality than the one that
Yeah.
you've been
And when
living.
you realize that the objectively it's just all trappings, you can use it. I mean, there is a
Yes.
whole area of Sufi magic that is a form of sigil magic, making specific patterns to direct your consciousness towards certain things.
These symbols, they stand for the intent. They
Yeah,
are somehow, you are, through the practice of making the sigil, coming up with the sigil, you are allowing it to give you a tangible or visible object on which to focus to enhance your sense
yeah.
of will.
It's a visual story when you
Yes.
do it. They're the kind that I learned to make were made from magic squares, if you know what those are.
Yes.
And yeah, there's a whole art to it, and it can be very, very pretty.
And there
But
are many ways to do it. Yeah. I mean, some
and
people,
that's different than having objects that you think have some sort of inherent power that you are going to draw upon that's outside of you.
mhm,
Yeah. And
yeah.
this again, if you're really interested in this, check out Arden. She's the person who coined the term, or her teacher coined the term, hypersigil, which is a
Yeah.
brilliant idea.
Right.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's sort of what we're getting at, but we kind of tend to stop short of becoming in a fully immersed, lost in the identification sort of way. We stop just short of that
Yeah.
because that gets into ego reification. I'm going to use a big word, getting stuck, getting solid there in a way that is the opposite of what we're trying to do as Sufis. Yeah, James.
The last point you make, but getting lost in the identity you're creating, that always seemed to me to be the big downfall of the sort of Anton LaVey Church of Satan
Mm,
hyper I'm the Dark Predator. And its most recent example, Marilyn Manson, the musician who was outed by me in the Me Too movement. I
yep.
recall reading his biography, and I felt like this is a person who's starting to go on a power fantasy of a sort of unconditional recreation of themselves as the Satanist, and then identifying totally with it as a weird psychological compensation, a kind of deliberate narcissism.
Mm,
Yeah. I always imagine Marilyn Manson was like, I am the darkness.
Mm.
His mother yells down, Marilyn, come to dinner. Mom, I'm trying to be the darkness.
yeah. Yep. But I mean, he tried really hard at it and
Yeah.
became a total
Mm.
narcissistic asshole. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's what comes away from the LaVey material, deliberately inculcating narcissism.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of, I hate using this word, but it's toxic, right? Like damaging to him, damaging to everyone around him.
It is toxic. Call it what it is.
Yeah, right. Oh,
Yeah. Enough of that.
Yeah. Sorry
the
for that
dark
grim
side of
sideline.
magic. No, that's okay because I think that shows why we operate the way that we do within magical practice.
Yeah. Yeah. God, who was it? Was it Bucky Fuller? No, somebody coined two terms. We have the term wealth, right? But some economists realized that there was the opposite of that, which he called ilth. Ilth is the acquisition of stuff that creates toxicity, whereas wealth would create goodness. And when you take that particular polarity into mind, you realize that we don't have that much wealth in the world. Got a lot of ilth.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought, an aside, because we got to start looking at winding this thing down because I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, you're getting hungry, and we've had a
This
long
is
day.
all about dinner.
Yeah.
These things, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think accountability is a word that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
We, in our world building, in our myth making, in our magic, especially as Sufis, accountability has to come into, it has to be relevant. You know, the results that we get, are they going to bring wealth to the world? Or are they going to bring ill? And that matters to us. That apparently does not matter to everybody. They want what they want. They don't care how they get it or who it hurts, as we were just discussing, but it does matter to us.
Yeah. And just as an aside, I learned that concept from Robert Anton Wilson.
Mm.
And today is Robert Anton Wilson Day. So
Wait, is it his birthday or just happy,
it's
just
Robert Anton Wilson Day because
celebrating him in general?
It's
Yeah.
the 23rd, 723.
Perfect.
It's 72323, which means that it's 23 squared or something.
And you didn't even know that today, did you?
Yeah, I did actually. I knew that
Oh.
today.
Well, then today's the perfect talk for today.
Yeah.
In his name.
Because we talk about magic a lot back in the day.
Yeah. Issa has a question.
Yes.
Maybe you might know how to answer it. By the storyteller using intent on the listener, which may be yourself, directing the conscious, something must reach out. Is it the words with intent? I'm thinking about this something reaching out. Is that necessarily true?
I think reaching out is stretching the metaphor a little bit.
I would say more that to affect something on the outside of oneself. Yeah, I don't know how I would phrase that differently. I think one way I'm thinking about it is that the story opens doors to change. It creates avenues of possibility. And it also may give motivation to step through that door of possibility into change.
So, Randy, what do you think? Are we crazy?
I'll just go ahead and say most likely know not more than me. So. Yeah.
We like that's fine with us. We're all, as we say, bozos on this bus. Yeah, Issa, this is stuff that I think, you know, it's not about like brainwashing into understanding, but it is about, I would say, not necessarily taking things at face value. We have, how do I put this? Mushtaq, you mentioned natural laws earlier, for example.
Yes.
And there are many things we take as assumptions about those natural laws. which may be difficult to challenge. Those assumptions may be difficult to challenge. But we've also talked about how waking up allows us opportunities to see a little bit of what is otherwise walled off to us about those natural laws. So when Mushtak says there's nothing supernatural about this, what that means is there's nothing breaking the laws of physics. We're not talking about like movie magic special, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry special effects. That is not a thing in the sense of it happening spontaneously. We know that cool effects can happen when we mix certain material compounds with other material compounds. And at some point in human history, that has been considered a magic itself because the reasons why those things occurred were unknown to the people who first did them.
Yeah, and she may be talking, by the way, about tin and copper or iron and carbon.
Things that we deal with every day and now understand in much deeper ways than we may have a couple thousand years ago.
Yeah, back in the day, smiths were considered magic because everybody knows that iron is a moderately crappy metal to build things out of. I mean, you can do it. It makes okay wagon rims and things like that, but to make a blade, to make a sword, iron sucks. Steel, on the other hand, makes a really good blade if you know what you're doing. If you don't, it's worse than iron. And that, to the outsider, seems magical. But remember, when you go to a magic show, the magician is the only one who doesn't see the magic. Think about that. And that may be a good place to wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts or questions?
Well, I'm full of thoughts.
Yeah, and I hope you'll share them with us at some point. Yeah.
I'll try and make this as quick as possible. Well, as well as Robert, I want to talk about the other Wilson, the infamous Colin. My mind's really bouncing around the idea of expansive values, expansive and crappy, narrow, narcissistic stuff.
Mm.
Okay, there's a few things I'm drawing together. One of the things I did sort of take away from Uncle Al was the idea of there being a true will or a higher will, some kind of, I don't think he had it, but some kind of, I won't say purpose, but some kind of visionary aspect, something expansive in your life. And which it's good to some larger self as opposed to smaller self, not because small self is bad because it can't do certain things. And Colin Wilson, I don't know if it's still in print, and it's got a lot of unreconstructed chauvinism throughout it, but he wrote a book, The Order of Assassins, and he talked about serial killers and talked about their obsession.
I think that you can still get a hold of that book.
Yeah. I've got an old ancient secondhand copy, but I actually found it inspirational because he basically pointed out these people will go on these hideous crime sprees and think that they're, the wolf among the herd, the whatever, are actually entering a far more enclosed, narrow, suffocating, miserable space, even though it's temporarily getting them high.
Mm.
And he had some wonderful passages in there about which have a real sense of ethics attached to them, but ethics born of a kind of a vision of beauty as opposed to necessarily God telling you it's right or wrong. Which for me once again ties back into Viktor Frankl's logotherapy.
Yeah.
So that's
Wilson had interesting ideas. I was a great fan of his back in the 60s. And he has his problems. He has a lot of problems, but that being said, he had some good ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, reading The Mind Parasites changed my perspective on everything.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I found a copy of that in 1967 in Haight-Ashbury and
Oh,
read it
wow.
mostly while tripping.
Oh Lord.
Adventurous.
You're
Yeah,
a braver
like I
man
said,
than
it
I am. I
changed
wouldn't have.
my view
Well.
of the world.
Yeah. Okay. That was all I want to say. Apart from the thing that I'm interested in this Arden Leigh because I think she came up on my Facebook algorithm because you're friends with her
Yeah, she's a friend of ours. Yeah, and we
and
hung
really
out with
has.
her the other week too.
I looked at her stuff and saw she was very much into, or her teacher was Grant Morrison, whose comics I love.
Yeah, she's his, not just his student, she's his inheritor.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Okay. Thank you. That's sharpened my interest. Okay. Shall we let you
And
go
she's
and have dinner?
incredibly cool. She's delightful. We like her.
Yep.
I'm going to shut up now though, because I'll keep blabbing and blabbing. You won't get to your dinner. That always makes me feel guilty. So
All right. Feel guilty.
Guilt,
Stick 'em up
guilt.
here yeah, give them all the guilt.
Yeah, let that
We are
story
still
shift your
here.
behavior accordingly.
All right. We are in Brady Bunch mode. So wave goodbye, folks.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here, and
We'll see you
see you again
next
soon.
time.